Calling this seminar?
I called it better harping through technology.
Okay. So, what are we talking about when we talk about technology?
Yeah, so what I was thinking is, that's kind of a loose title, but the main thing I was thinking is on our acoustic instruments, mostly diatonic harmonica, the mass-produced harmonicas that have been in circulation, at least for most of recorded history, you know, have been kind of variations mostly of the same things, right? Like the chromatic harmonica and diatonic harmonica that were most prevalent if you went to a music store in 1950 or 1960 are not so different from what we have now. They even have the same names a lot of times, Marine Band 270, and there have been a lot of innovations, or depending on how you think of that word, that it sounds like predated that then maybe when mass production, when Winslow was educating me, when mass production took over, some models that might have been more common, or ideas that may have been more common before mass production, kind of went extinct for a little while. And, you know, now, in addition to inventive companies, we're seeing a lot of kind of cottage, boutique builders who have the technology to create at a high level working instruments and, you know, with more pared down setups. That, to me, my main goal with this class was to learn some things myself from Winslow and kind of discuss pretty much instruments that, if you're like me and you feel like you have limited time in terms of learning stuff, feel like an instrument I can look at and be like, okay, I don't need to practice that for an hour every day for the next 5 years to figure out how that could be useful to me or get something out of it. There's an instrument that is so similar to form factors, note layouts, techniques that I've already spent years working on, that I'm looking at what that is, and I see in a very short period of time, maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's a couple hours of practice, whatever it is, that's an instrument I could instantly get something out of with my existing skill set. That's kind of my focus on this, but I wanted to talk, I just don't know much about other things, and Winslow, you know, has a different set of knowledge that, you know, that was my thinking about this technology aspect of it.
Okay. Well, like we were talking about last night, harmonica went from something completely handmade. You know, if you look up on the internet, you can find a Zwahlein harmonica, Z-W-A-H-L-E-I-N, and you can see close-ups of the reed plates. You can tell that was made by hand with somebody with clock-making skills. And early harmonicas were hand-produced, and some makers were not skilled, and some were very skilled. When they went to mass production, things got standardized. You had factories, you know, with steam power and all of that. And that's when the harmonica really took off as a mass item. You know, I went back through newspapers as far back as I could go. And even to, like, somebody in England first discovering, oh, look at this little German invention. And they were very much impressed with German technology at the time and inventiveness. And even up through the 1860s and 70s, when we had harmonica virtuosos, it was still being sold along with combs, notions, and toys in newspaper advertisements. But when we get to the 1870s, that's when we really see mass production, we see branding, we see, you know, a lot of what we're familiar with today. But we've come to a point, this is again a bit of what we were talking about, it's now practical to create not just maybe making an instrument play better. I mean, we think of Joe Falisco as the guy who started harmonica customization. That was going on, certainly with chromatics back in the 30s and 40s. You talk to the old timers and you find out, you know, these guys did all sorts of things. They built special tunings, they built stunt harps. This is what they call them, because I've got this harp tuned up to play this specific song for this specific part. You know, they could do things like that.
It did something special,
right,
just for that one.
Just for that one tune, not because this is the tuning I like to use all the time.
Right.
And what we're seeing, though, is with things like 3D printing and people with advanced engineering skills, or sometimes just basic engineering skills, starting to produce ideas and create things that we didn't think were possible, or maybe nobody thought to do because they didn't have the skills. I mean, I'm looking over at that double chromatic there, that power cone thing. Right? Oh, well, there's that too. Now,
double chromatic, sorry.
I mean, these are both Brendan power things. You put one chromatic behind another. Give a little taste of what that sounds like, Ross.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things too is, you know, obviously there are economic considerations for mass production, but it seems like in a smaller interest groups, now that that technology and, you know, the inventive people are around, you know, this is perhaps sustainable cottage industry for some guys. They may not make sense for large companies to manufacture because they may not sell that many units, but if an individual harmonica customizer or maker could sell hundreds or thousands, that's, you know, could be years of work for them. That might not do much for a big company. So yeah, so basically Brendan, who has really been an inspiration and a source of a lot of great new sounds for me, he took a 270, the standard C chromatic, and he put a tenor 270 behind it, so down an octave. And I think the idea with this was that somehow this actually works fine, that you can put them in and out of line with each other. Not a function that I personally thought to use much, and in fact when I told him that I didn't really need it, if it made any sense not to make that happen, because it seems like a source of instability, he said there's really nothing lost for it. So yeah,
Is it magnetic or?
This I could not tell you. This is not my purview. I'm not exactly sure, but the seal between those two combs is such that I guess the amount of air you might lose by giving it this flexibility was basically nothing. So normal 270. And again, this is my whole point. I already know how to play that. That's an example of I had to practice for 0 seconds to have a sound that I did not have before, and he was able to execute it in a way that, you know, is totally functional. And yeah, so
it's an octave apart.
Yeah, so it's an octave. It's not a tremolo harp. Suzuki markets a tremolo chromatic that they're in the same octave. It's 2 reeds per note, but they're in the same octave. This is an octave apart, and it works, I mean, kind of miraculously well. You know, and you do have to adapt your playing a little bit, because if you're on the bottom of the harp, you're now playing some really low reeds. You may not be able to play as fast as, you know, if I went. You know, the low reed needs more time to speak than the high reed, but that's the only adaptation, and it's a very cool sound to me, you know. And yeah, but that was just demonstrating that for
Yeah.
the thread that you were on that I've lost now.
Well, where were we? Well, okay. We have the ability to do a lot more with cottage industry stuff than we once had, thanks in large part to technology. And there's kind of a middle place, like the people over at JDR who came up with the Trochilus, and they're making some very good chromatics. Pete Hoagie, who's unfortunately doing another seminar at this time and can't join us, or we can't join him either. He visited their factory in China, and you know, it's just a little unprepossessing place out in the countryside, but it's young guys with a passion to do really cool things. So they're kind of in the middle. They're not a big factory. They're not, you know, one guy with a little shop. They're kind of in the middle, and it's possible to do that largely because of the technologies we have at our disposal. You know, they've redesigned basically the slide harp into that 10-hole size, you know, with its unique shape and at least 4 different, maybe 5 different tunings now. So that's been a real cool thing to see. Now the other thing down there, of course, it's the slider bass which you initially picked up. You know, the bass harmonica is two instruments, you know, two decks as they say, as is the chord. And it's kind of awkward to jump up and down and find your note. And again, this makes it a whole lot easier. I mean, the first time I played a slider bass, I was like, dang, this is just, the thing that kind of threw me though was, because it had a slide, I expected there to be draw notes, right, from playing chromatic. I had to adapt to that. But again, this is like a high-tech solution from a small shop with lots of ideas.
And again, I think also, like many of these ideas that we're going to be presenting, it's a retrofit onto something being manufactured by the larger makers that, you know, obviously my assumption is there's a world where it's not a retrofit and everything ends up working significantly better because it's, you know, it's made for it, you know. Yeah.
So the innovation there is that you have just one mouthpiece, is that
Right.
Yeah, and you can play both.
Yeah, you're not jumping up and down and
That's what
maybe
the
missing a
slide
note.
is.
Yeah.
Has everyone seen a standard bass harmonica and you're familiar, right? So this was something that I personally bothered Brendan quite a bit about to make because it seemed kind of like an obvious idea, and I thought I was like a genius, you know. I was like, and then I talked to like some older chord harmonica players, and they're like, oh yeah, man, we had those. Like, you know, guys have been making them, you know, by themselves for a long period of time. It was not any innovative idea. Actually, it's a pretty obvious thing because moving between two decks is basically like having your white notes on a B3 down here and your black notes up. It was incredibly difficult. And so this was an instrument that when Brendan worked it out, he sent it to me, the same thing. I played bass harmonica not particularly well. I owned one, I would play it a little bit, but I would say I was not great at it. You know, and it was an instrument that also struck me as not worth me putting time in personally, because it was so hard that like I'm just not gonna put the time in to do something that's just not the juice is not worth the squeeze if it's that hard. But this thing, I got it and it was just like it was like I could almost just pick it up and do that relatively instantly from playing some amount of bass harp, and all of a sudden I was like, wow, this is a powerful instrument that I didn't have to really learn anything else about. I was already, from my bass harmonica playing, I think my brain said, you're going to switch decks. So my brain already knew I had to do something to get up a half step. And in this particular case, you accomplish the deck move by hitting the slide. And I just asked him to make it on the Suzuki because my brain, from a chromatic standpoint, was used to every time I hit the slide, it would go up a half step. And if you use the Hohner tuning, which actually makes a lot of sense for deck change reasons, they basically made it so that you could play the root and fifth of every key on the same, knowing that the deck change was the hardest move, I think. Yeah. Hohner basically thought, well, if root and fifth are the most essential notes of any chord change and you're playing the bass, we want to make it so you can play every root and fifth of a chord without changing decks, so you don't have one key that's like one deck change harder than the other keys. But with this, it eliminates the need for that, and so I chose this tuning. Everyone goes up a half step on the Hohner because of that deck change thing. There's one note that doesn't go up a half step. So, but anyway, this one changed my life. I got a lot of work. I continue getting a lot of work out of this, and I feel like I can actually play the things without it being something that I look at a bass part and be like, well, give me like 2 weeks to practice this 45 minutes a day and maybe I won't mess it up. But that one deck change I'll still probably mess up, you know. This, it's like, you know.
When you refer to Brendan, is that Brendan Power?
Brendan Power, yes. Yes, our...
Did he fabricate that? Somebody else.
He fabricates, and I think what he's doing changes on a regular basis because he's always trying to find new ways. So I believe on this one, he fabricated the 3D printed connective tissue here
Yeah.
and button, but unlike a lot of his other instruments, he did actually have to have this mouthpiece milled. And I'm not sure if he's in a place where he's trying to mill metal like that himself. I don't think so, but yeah, so that was unusual, and that would represent something that I think was a little more challenging for him to design, whereas this one, he was able to do it just on 3D printed parts that he could manufacture himself. There was not a metal milling part of it.
Yeah, I mean, often you can go to machine shops that specialize in particular kinds of work and get the parts made you need. In fact, when I came up with my idea for the discrete comb harmonica, now this is like...
This is your original invention, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, all there really is to it, aside from some internal stuff, is that each hole is divided into a top and bottom. So I found a machinist locally who could mill lucite in the way that I needed, and I just had him do that work. And what this one does, now, facilitating overblows on diatonic well, we're seeing some examples of the latest working out of that on the table, and Ross will talk about it a little later. But when people first started trying to play overblows, well, they found a lot of the harmonicas didn't do it well, they needed reed adjustment, and that was part of the whole burgeoning of the cottage industry of people like Joe Falisco and Joe Spires, and a whole lot of people who were doing really good custom work. Partly because at the time, diatonic harmonicas were so incredibly bad. We had Hohner and Hohner pretty much in those days. And that, in fact, gave an opening for a lot of the Asian companies. But people realized, okay, we need to adjust reeds, but why don't we make it easier? Because the whole problem with an overblow is that the overblow is actually produced by the draw reed being pushed backwards, and you need to get the draw reed to where it will do that, and the blow reed to where it'll shut up when you don't want it to sound. So Hank Bonson, who was a cardiologist and actually made ultrasound of Howard Levy bending notes, right? So we could see, oh, it's the tongue doing the work, and I could see exactly what was going on. But he came up with this idea of having a plate slide over and block the reeds you didn't want to play. And I remember at some of the spa conventions 30 some odd years ago, Richard Farrell, whom some of you will remember, started selling these, and chromatic players would come back, this thing doesn't work. Well, of course, it's that the slide doesn't do what you expect it to do. Like if I were to play draw 4, it won't really overblow until I press this in because it blocks the blow reed. I can even bend it up because the blow reed's out of the picture, all of the air is going to the draw reed, and it was a cool idea. But he had to hand make these, and it was an incredible amount of work. So it didn't turn out to be practical. What I came up with is just divide the comb. I can isolate that draw reed. This is a different key, it's an A. Well, what I can also do, I can isolate the blow reed. Now, this one's not set up, it's a little too tight to bend well. But you can actually do isolated reed bends. And then Suzuki came up with another way to do it, which was to have these little finger holes along the back, but it's very easy to block them by accident just holding the harmonica. And the thing is like a bar of soap, it's very smooth and no edges. So these are all sort of ideas where, again, you don't have to relearn the note layout or your basic technique. You just have this little adaptation that gives you a new behavior out of the reeds.
Right, and I don't know the ins and outs of that Suzuki, but I think that looks to me like it speaks to what was the easiest way on their current manufacturing process to access what they were trying to do. It strikes me as not the best way, but it was the thing where they just had to like put some holes in a cover and there it was. And so I think that's a consideration that people have, is like how many people are interested in this cool thing versus what's the easiest way to implement it in the most cost effective. A lot of times what I see is that they're not the best way, and the people selling it and manufacturing even know it's not the best way. it's just a way that seems like it's viable. So a big part of what I want to try to help in my work as a harmonica player and a member of the harmonica community is trying to support people doing these things really well. Because if it's not done well, it's kind of not that functional, even if the idea was great. And I think a lot of the technology is there for these ideas to be done well. It's just without much of a market or demand. Sometimes you end up like with just some holes in the cover plate, and then you can't hold the harmonica. It's just kind of like, it seems kind of silly to my thinking,
Yeah.
but it's clear like, yeah.
Yeah, well, it was a simple idea, it's just
Right.
not all that practical. I mean, it's interesting you talked about the player not having to adapt too much.
That's for me, because
Well-
I'm a wimp.
Well, who doesn't want to take the path of least resistance, right? But that's true for the manufacturers as well.
Right.
Right? Like, I've seen Suzuki take their, well, actually, I've seen Seidel do this too. They'll take their basic 12-hole chromatic format and say, how many different things can we do with this, right? Oh, let's take the slide off and put on a mouthpiece with holes on the top and the bottom, and they get your non-slider,
Right.
which is way more airtight than any of the other valveless chromatics because there's no slider. It means you gotta do this, okay, that's a player adaptation, and it might be too much of a one. On the other hand, you can play overblows, you can play on, standard diatonic bends. So, you get something, you give something up. They had for a while, I forget what they called it, the word balalaika comes to mind because it was two C harps, but if you move the slide in and out, you would get that brrrr kind of a sound.
That's awesome.
Right? Or Suzuki did it with their 14-hole chord harp, built on the 14-hole chromatic, but now you've got a whole bunch of chords. I don't think it went over all that well, because for the player there was a big learning curve.
I tried that one. Yeah, you had to have like an unprecedented level of accuracy if you were gonna
Right.
move around on that thing.
Yeah. And then building what they're calling the bass chromatic. To get a chromatic, any harmonica to sound that low, it really helps to have much bigger reach, but that means a new form factor and a big expense for the manufacturer.
Right.
So
And very, very noisy valves on that one.
I wouldn't be surprised, yeah. I mean, whereas you can get some of the old polyphonias that go down there and they play beautifully, right? Or we see the same thing with diatonic. People want lower and lower pitched diatonics. Heavier reeds, yeah, they're not going to be as responsive, but people really like the sound. It's a familiar form factor, they know where the notes are. Right? Same thing is true with some of the alternate tunings. And I brought some of those. I mean, you can take, let's say, a basic C harp. Oh, I can lower these reeds and get two different kinds of minor harps. Oh, I can raise draw 5 and have country tuned, right? Everything's familiar, you know where it all is, it's just now you get some different sounds out of it. Whereas the Will Wild tuning, up to a certain point is familiar, then you get in the top end, and I understand why he did what he did, but you really have to learn that. Or like Tony Ayers, who's here, he has his major cross, and a lot of it plays like a normal harmonica, except you go to play the blow chord, and instead of the 4 chord, it's the 5 chord. You might draw a G, and you blow and you get a D.
Right.
Now, for what he wants to do, that makes perfect sense, but that means you've got to remap your expectations. If you go here and do that, what are you going to hear?
Right.
Right. So the familiarity factor is, I think, almost predictive of the success of something.
Well, and for me, it's largely, it makes sense that, especially with Seidel now as one of the bigger manufacturers that has configurator that basically, within reason, one can come up with any tuning you want that makes sense to you, and they'll build it. It makes sense that anything one wants to explore, they can. But for me, I think as a general rule, it would be what you said. Like, if it's not relatively familiar, I think my head will just explode, and I will say there's too many things in this world for me to work on to figure out why that note that used to be a draw note is a blow note now. Like, it's just, I've moved on. Or if I see a chromatic where I have to go like that, it's like definitely not going to do that for me. But for other people, it makes sense. If you're in a rack, you have a different set of concerns, and if you wanted a fully chromatic harmonica that you didn't have to overblow and you're playing in a rack, that thing makes a lot of sense to me, especially if it could. So it's into the individual, I think, and Would you mind talking a little bit about the alternate tunings? That's not something I've gotten that far into, but I see a lot of value in it, especially ones that are in the, or maybe you could demonstrate the ones that are in a more familiar form factor.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I got interested in the history of alternate tunings, and I wondered how far back does the harmonic minor go? And that's one where you get a minor blow chord, you get a major 5 chord.
So this is tuned just like a Richter harp, but every, what would be an E on a C harp, 2 blow, 5 blow,
And 8 blow would be an E flat.
down. So it's basically C harp becomes C minor, but it's just one difference.
Right. Well, there are a couple of other differences. You get a G major chord, unlike the natural minor.
Ah, okay, yeah. 6 draws down a half step.
Right, so you get that scale that people say, oh, that sounds Middle Eastern, that sounds klezmer, that sounds whatever.
Right.
That actually goes back to the 1880s. I thought maybe they came around in the 1920s, like the Hohner Orchestra harp with the little metal inserts on the comb. But I was corresponding with Isabella Krapf, who's an Austrian harmonica historian, and she found examples of the Wilhelm T, which was actually the earliest big manufacturer before Hohner, and they wrote of Vienna, not out of southern Germany, and they were making minor harps all the way back then, because people wanted to play in minor keys. I've even seen clips of very elderly Finnish men playing octave-tuned ones and playing Finnish folk music on them. It just made sense that for the kind of music people wanted to play, oh, we changed this, here you go, breathing patterns are familiar, you'll just get this other scale. Right. And likewise, the natural minor, which I think Lee Oscar came out with, let's see what's this one. Which he designed to be played in second position. So you got your 1 chord, your draw chord, pardon me, your blow chord on the blow, your 4 chord on the blow. We're all get a little bit of brain fry after this week. And then you've got your 5 chord, but it's also minor.
So again, this is the same as Richter with a few half-step adjustments to certain.
Right, and that's all it really is. Of course, one of the confusing things is that Hohner would say this is a C natural minor, even though in C it would actually play a different scale, a Dorian scale. But Lee Oscar and everybody else says, oh no, it's a G minor because it's meant to be played in second position, right? So it gets a little confusing. And then
The nomenclature of it.
Suzuki has a completely different take. They have one that is a natural minor but in first position. They did something different from everybody else. But again, it's familiar enough, or country tuning, where you just raise one note. But it's a very pretty sound. You've got a major 7th chord, but you've also got right. You've got that 1, 4, 5 chord, all major, but it's familiar enough.
Right.
Is that the Suzuki or the Oscar?
Well, the one I just played is actually, I just took a marine band and tuned draw 5 out. And actually the natural minor, this is actually a Bushman. I decided to spread the wealth around and see who,
I just bought.
Yeah, right. And then the harmonic minor is a Suzuki Manchi. Again, I wanted to spread things around a little bit because I thought, okay, I'm going to acquire some of these and play around with them and maybe write about them.
Yeah, and I've never really, I think I've had a minor harp or a few alternate tuning harps, a country tune harp, but for me, I think that's something that I see a lot of value in. I'll probably have to get myself a set of them because, I mean, we only get really 2 chords if you're not getting fancy with it on the diatonic harmonica. Neither of them are minor, so it presents some inherent problems if you want to translate certain types of things you already do to settings. So if you could just buy a new harp and that took care of it, that's something that I'm kind of shocked I haven't got around to doing.
I've been using the Oscar minor keys. I have them on every key, and it seems to work when you're in A minor or B minor or C minor or D minor on a blues song or any kind of song. Really,
Yeah,
they work really well, I think. And then the harmonic minor obviously is more for Egyptian music and Middle Eastern music, but it's kind of a unique little sound.
Right.
But the natural minors, I think, are really good, in my opinion.
Well,
Yeah.
it seems like it also makes a lot of things easier. Like, you know, if you're playing in second position, if you're playing certain styles, maybe it makes sense to have to kind of bend the 3 draw a little bit every time you play it, a little bit. But if you're playing other things, maybe that's just making your life a lot harder. You know, I mean, for me, for example, if somebody gave me a song to read a melody on, and I thought I was going to have to overblow and bend and all this stuff, I would just play it on chromatic. That just seems easier to me. So why wouldn't I do that? And so minor key, these alternate tune, you know, things that are just small adjustments, it makes a lot of sense. Actually, I remember pretty recently a friend of mine sent me a great video of one of the great blues harp players out there right now, Victor Puertas, and he was playing clearly a country tune harp, and it made sense for it, and he was doing it in like a ragtime blues context. Despite the name country, it was not country at all, but he was just crushing it, and it was really cool to see the extra possibilities that I think guys who play certain historic styles really well are probably more inclined to do it the way that tradition, you know, has developed. So maybe they're not likely to get an alternate tune harp if that's not on recordings of artists that they looked up to. And hearing him just tear it up on this thing with a new set of possibilities and a minimal change to his skill set. I mean, basically all it did is it made the 5 chord in second position major. So like, you know, you could play like some third position licks if you want to think about it that way there, but they were major instead of minor, and it really suited that song great. And I thought that was awesome. And actually, since this instrument came out, this is the Bushman Game Changer. I think they're also sold as the JDR Troculus.
Right, yeah.
Right. So
Same harp.
Same harp. Okay, yeah. So I got this. A friend sent it to me, and I tried it, and I was blown away at how cool and how useful it was. I'll demonstrate a little bit in a second. And I had always known, or for a long time I had known about Little Walter. He has a recording or two on the Koch harmonica, Koch harmonica?
Koch, yeah.
Koch harmonica. That was really cool, but definitely like an oddball in his, you know, an outlier in his, you know, catalog.
Sonny Boy has used one on recording as well.
Yeah, and that was what I was
Miller.
going to say. I just found that out
Yeah.
and listened to it, and it's interesting. The two of those guys played the harp totally different. You know, when Little Walter's playing it, he plays it a lot more like the chromatic. He's not bending much, and he's kind of using little slide things. It doesn't sound much like his blues harp, but you can tell from the note layout that it is a Richter-tuned harp, and he's doing the slide bumps, and it's really cool. And then Sonny Boy played it totally different. He's kind of just sounds like Sonny Boy playing his cool, you know, stuff that he does with all the bends, and then every once in a while he hits that. So it was interesting for me to reflect on the idea that somebody who might be really devoted to traditional playing styles might avoid a country-tuned harp, or they might avoid something like this. But in fact, actually, if I thought more about it, some of those kind of founding fathers of those styles, I guess they got them and they were stoked to have it. They put it on their records, and maybe, you know, it's worth just kind of keeping an open mind about those things.
Yeah, well, I mean, they would find things and try them and play them, you know, play around with them. They both played the Koch, and one of the reasons they probably didn't bend very much is because those harps were pretty leaky.
Right, I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah,
They were
and
not
whereas these
fun to
are
play with.
extremely airtight, you can do all the normal stuff.
Yeah.
But you'll also find examples of Little Walter recording one record with Muddy Waters where he plays an auto valve, an octave-tuned harp, doesn't bend any notes, but, you know, he tried it out and said, okay, let's use it on this record.
And there was that Jerry McCain recording you shared with me
Right,
as well.
yeah, people will, you know, you go on Facebook, oh, you can't play blues on a tremolo harmonica. Well, listen to Jerry McCain playing Texas 728. He's playing an Asian-tuned tremolo in third position, you know, and getting really cool sounds. You know, these guys were not dyed in the wool, I will only play this. They tried out whatever was available, and occasionally they would actually record with it, and if they saw something cool they could do with it.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, I want to do a little demonstrating in a second, just, you know, so we have some sound bites, but I think it's important for us to support these makers who are doing it, because it does seem to me, Sonny Boy, Little Walter, they both saw value in that harmonica, the Coke, but it didn't play particularly great, so it doesn't seem like it was something they made a lot of use out of. Now, JDR and Bushman have made a harp that, in my opinion, plays quite well, you know, and so that's an example of where the execution of it, the idea made sense to guys back then, they were doing it, just the execution maybe didn't make it quite as player-friendly, and so it didn't really catch on. So I think it's important for us all to kind of support some of these innovative ideas so that they can get done better and better and the ball can keep moving forward. Yeah.
Just a general comment, I needed a screw for a World War II pistol my combat veteran father brought home from Germany. A friend of mine owns a machine shop. I said, can you make me one of those? He said, yeah, I can make one. The first 10 will be $150 a piece. After that, it's you know, 25, like a tenth of a cent for each one. You know, it's like, he said, yeah, I can make 1,000 of them for, you know, 10 cents more than what 10 of them will cost. You know,
Yeah,
so I really don't need 1,000 of them. But,
Tooling, right?
Right.
Shading.
Let me just play this harp a little bit. So again, this is tuned just like a regular blues harp. So the form factor, I think, is really cool because it's not as big as a chromatic, so it feels more like a blues harp, but it still feels different. It doesn't feel like a substitute for a blues harp. It's definitely still a different form factor. And so, you know, I didn't really have to learn. Yeah.
Let me show you something. Back to back, right, at the back,
Oh yeah.
they're the same width, but they had to make it bigger on the front because you got, you know, 40 reeds instead of 20. But they did a nice job, and plus it's a unique look, you know, with that trapezoidal shape. Or is that a trapezoid? Oh, I forget which form, you know, it is. It is a trapezoid. Oh, that's right. The other one's a parallel, what grammar is it?
Rhombus.
Yeah.
It's
Wrong. Yeah, wrong.
it's a
You do what you best.
game changer shape.
Right.
Yeah, and so the other thing that I liked about it is, you know, actually, this was such an easy transition in a limited capacity. Now, any innovative thing you could get really deep into and find all of the unique things that maybe you'd have to dive kind of deep to find on them, you know what I mean? Like there's some of the stuff I was demonstrating, like with the octave chromatic, it's just kind of surface level stuff. I put it in line, the two, and then it's there, right? This, because, you know, you have alternate ways with, so basically if you don't understand what this harp is, it's a blues harp, and then if you press the slide in, you have access to a blues harp up a half step. So it's twice as many reeds, and you know, you can ignore the button altogether, or make a lot of use out of it. As a result, you know, you have a lot of alternate ways with bends to get the same exact note, and there's a lot of like deep things to it if you felt like getting into the weeds of like, all right, 3 jaws, a half step bend with the button out, is no bend with the button in, or you know, did that in reverse.
Yeah,
But
it'd be 2 semitone bend.
But then you can bend it up to the floor.
yeah, exactly. Like if you had a half step bend with the button out, it's a whole step bend with the button in.
Right.
Right. So you could get like crazy about learning all that stuff and figuring out, or you could not. But
Yeah, and there is some fun in that.
right. Yeah.
Because you can actually play the same note doing this, and you get an articulation from the slide, and you get 2 slightly different tone colors.
Right, yeah, bend a note and hit the slide, you know, and it's gonna yeah.
Yeah, and you can go up a semitone, or if you finesse it, you can keep the same pitch.
So when I picked this up, it instantly made sense to me because, first of all, that middle register then becomes exactly a chromatic harmonica. It's the solo tune register. So you know, just normal first position. Right, do all that stuff, but that middle register all of a sudden becomes much more useful without overblowing. If you're overblowing, you can obviously get all the notes. You know, you still have, but now, you know, it was that easy. You could not use the button, or so to me it's just a great instrument, you know. I had to learn almost nothing, but there's a lot of room to practice, to figure out where other things might be if you wanted them. And it suits certain types of music a lot better for me than both the blues harp or the chromatic.
I'm a basic guy. If you carry one harmonica, you got an A and a B flat at the same time.
Yes.
You got one harp. It's a concrete thing. I've been playing in a jam with a guitarist who plays Hideaway. And I bought one of those last year, had no idea what to do with it. But you can get the second, the minor third, and the major third on the 4 and the 5 chord on Hideaway, like Freddie King plays it, and actually do a fairly credible version of Hideaway on that thing.
Yeah, right.
That you can't do without overblowing on, to my knowledge, and I can't overblow well enough.
Well, I would say that if there was a thing against it, which I wouldn't actually hold against it, it's that it can do, for me, the blues harp thing, but it feels kind of different, so to me it's kind of like not what I wouldn't pick this up if the idea was to play just, but, you know, you totally, to me that's not, you know, it obviously excels the moment you want to go. But you can still do that blues harp stuff. So for me, that's partially part of the game, is figuring out where is the fruit of that instrument that's not a lateral. But you are right, you could play it up a half step. So actually, if you felt comfortable in first, second, and third position, all of a sudden you have one harmonica that you might feel like you could play 6 keys on. And for whatever reason, I've also found a couple other positions that I never think to play on blues harp are totally great on it, you know. And while we're there, I just wanted to show.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Is that why they call it the game changer, or what's the reason for the
Yeah,
game
that's
changer?
John Hall's idea for what to call it, because he feels it is a game changer. You know?
Yeah.
Whereas a trochilus is a specific type of hummingbird, and we don't know what kind of thinking went into that. You know?
I do see a hummingbird on
Even how to pronounce it, right? I was saying
Yeah, right.
trochilus at first, and then I found, oh no, it's trochilus.
Yeah, right.
And another harp that, you know, is on the same form, made by the same guys, is the
Usually the case silent, Nittlinger.
Nittlinger.
Nittlingen is a city in Germany where actually a lot of harmonica manufacturing, that's where Koch was located. And
So that was a company.
Koch was a company.
That was
Yeah.
not made by Hohner, the Colt.
Well, they were acquired by Hohner. Hohner acquired a lot of smaller manufacturers, like Paul and one or two other ones, and they used those for like their second, third, fourth level of quality.
Right.
Whereas Hohner is always the best.
I see. It looks like they're right.
But Nittlingen is a city with harmonica manufacturing, and in fact, the auto valve was originally something that came out of Nittlingen. So there's informed history in the naming of that harmonica.
And so this instrument made by the same guys, Bushman, JDR, is an auto valve, right? Or is similar,
Well, it's octave tuned and it is Richter tuned.
which is how the auto valve was?
That's how the auto valve
Right.
was. It just plays a whole lot better than the auto valve.
Right.
When Hohner decided to get rid of certain models.
So
around
like this with the
2013,
Colt, is the idea had been around, but they're executing it much better.
Exactly, yeah. Because they got rid of some of the wood comb instruments around 2013. They got rid of the auto valve, they got rid of the Koch, and also the 14-hole marine band. They still make the 12-hole.
Right.
They just decided, okay, let's get rid of those. But now we're seeing these coming back in a much, much nicer, well-made form.
And again, so now, this harp, I don't quite know how to make as much sense of for myself because I can't bend, I can't necessarily get all the notes that are common for me to need, but for certain types of music, no adaptation period, it's Richter tuned, yeah.
Yeah, years and years ago, I bought an auto valve, and I would use it as a change of pace kind of harp to do like a Cajun thing. Because if you tongue block octaves on a double reed instrument, you're totally in an accordion line. And I would just, the lack of bending didn't bother me because it was just sort of a unique, occasional harp.
And there's a lot of music that you don't need bent, they just are based on that skill.
My auto valve went bad, and then I called up Rock and Rinks and I go, I need some, they still make auto valves? He goes, Kim, they haven't made those for years. So I bought a few on eBay that were terrible, and then the Nittlingen came out, and I got one, and it's great. It's a beautifully made harp. It's really loud, and the auto valve was really a poor instrument. And I went up to thank the guy up in the booth, and he told me that he was selling in harmonicas in a region like where a lot of Amish people live.
Right, they've always been the big buyers.
According to him, the harmonica is the only instrument they're allowed to play. I'm not sure that's accurate, but they're really big into harmonicas, and they particularly love the auto valves. So they were like buying like huge amounts of these auto valves back in the old days. So a guy, one of his Amish clients asked him if he could make an auto valve since Motor had discontinued it, and he said, they're not going to go for that. We're not going to be able to sell enough of those. And he goes, well, I'd like to order $10,000. And he got on the phone, and they said, okay, they haven't done it in a month, so they say there's also these unique pressures or requests from certain, communities or countries or musical styles that kind of influence these business decisions too.
Right, there was a market for it, so the technology existed, it just wasn't going to get built without establishing the market first. Yeah, let me just play you just like a second on this thing.
Yeah.
So, that's just me playing a single note. If I played it as an octave, again, I didn't have to learn anything to be able to do that. That was just.
Second position?
I guess somewhere in the middle of that, I seem to have switched from first to second position.
No, we were playing 1 chord and the 5 chord in first position. It sounded to me like that.
I agree. Maybe just in the end, I only stayed on the 5 chord, so maybe it could have.
Yeah.
That was first position. I was just playing.
I mean, it sounded like you were. It sounded like you were kind of morphing into the jambalaya.
Yeah. But I mean, my point is, there was no bending and like.
So that was a C harmonic, correct? It's a C.
That is a C. Yeah. And so. To me, that's really cool. Kim, I'm assuming you use it on a song every once in a while. It's a nice texture change, and it sounds great. Yeah.
They only make them in C and G now. They may expand.
That's the
Well, these ones, he's got them in A. A is his lowest key. I think he has 4 keys, C and D, and maybe B flat, I'm not sure.
I think I have a B flat, so yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I mean, when I picked one of those things up, I found myself right away playing like French-Canadian folk tunes, which I originally heard on octave-tuned diatonic accordions. Diatonic accordions are tuned exactly like diatonic harmonicas. You know, each button is a hole. So for me, that spoke right away to that kind of folk music, which is mostly first position. But we've heard Little Walter use that on one Muddy Waters tune. Paul DeLay used them a fair bit, and got a really nice sound. You can't play them in second position. It's just you're limited to what notes are there, no bending. But it's really a distinctive sound. I mean, they've done an excellent job of reviving that Richter-tuned octave harp.
And that's the Nitlinger, right?
That's the Nitlinger, yeah. What's the
Yeah, I bought a Nitlinger, and because it's the same platform as the Game Changer, I ripped half the valves off and put a slide on it.
well, let's hear it, man.
So you can play, because it's like you have like a low C, right? And
So
just
now
a
here's
Richter-tuned low
somebody
C.
who's actually taking platforms and mixing them, that, I'm assuming that wasn't a super time-consuming thing, and you created a product that doesn't exist.
Well, the super time-consuming thing was really just taking the cover plates off and ripping all the valves on the outside
Right.
of it off, right? So it's basically half valved. Yeah, and yeah, I guess the cool thing is now when you hit the slide, it jumps up an octave, right? And so, you know, what I guess discovered is, like, if I'm just wanting to play like third position on a C harp.
So you get your bends back that were gone on
Yeah.
the Nittlinger.
I get, well, yeah, I left the valves on the inside, so it's essentially half valved now. But yeah, I get the bends back. But now if I let the slide go, then I get the third position down in the lower octave again. So I get the same breath pattern in 2 octaves.
Now, what did you do for a spring? It didn't have a spring built in.
I stole the extra spring off of one of my game changers, because you know they come with that little extra spring.
Right.
So I just
There
took
was a place
that.
to put it. They're just using the same comb, different color. Right?
Exactly, yeah.
Very interesting.
The Nittlinger mouthpiece just doesn't have the extra milling inside it for a slide.
Yeah.
That's the only difference. So it was like a very small factory change. All they had to do was eliminate the extra milling for the slide on the mouthpiece,
Right.
and then throw some valves on it. It was,
Can you play a little bit of what you were gonna say, switching octaves, or can you like trill it, or do you need to change your embouchure too much to be able to go low to high?
like
Alright,
that.
sick. Really cool. Can you do a chord and do the trill?
What was
Just like
it?
play a chord and then trill
A
it?
chord? Yeah. So
I
that's,
love that. See, that's actually
Yeah.
amazing. Well, one harp I definitely want to show you guys is something I've been a part of creating. This is being made by a friend of mine, Kenya Pollard, and this is sort of an updated version of the harmonica that Winslow first showed.
Bunsen.
The Bonson, and you should fill in any history you're aware of. So this was a harmonica that I think I should have kept a journal, but I did not. I think my evolution on this is I was a beta tester for Brendan Power, who was creating a product called the Overblow Booster, which struck me as something that really suited my particular interests, which were basically taking a blues harp, not having to really worry about a refined reed setup and having it incredibly, you know, customized to incredibly specific specs, and you know, because I had mostly played more or less out of the box harmonicas. That's just kind of what I was comfortable with. I didn't really, I'm not very good at getting in there and doing things precisely myself, and you know, for the most part, didn't find the need or didn't find it worthwhile to invest in fancy custom harps. And in fact, actually, when I did experiment with that, I didn't have great results. Wasn't a big believer in the need for custom harps for myself. That would be different for different people. And I've subsequently tried some custom harps that I thought they really knocked me out, really blew me away. But my initial forays into that, even with some of the same makers that have subsequently, or customizers that have subsequently knocked me out, I tried earlier things by them that didn't seem like a major upgrade to me. So even those guys are really improving what they're doing, I guess, as there's demand for their services. But anyway, he basically made a harp. The concept was, I guess, very similar to the Bonson concept, which is you have a great, hopefully, ideally, a great playing harp that has this button that basically makes overblowing far easier, and I think you can control the sound a lot better. Basically, it's creating the single reed experience. The reeds aren't interacting anymore. And so after Brendan kind of initially made a run of them and sent me some various prototypes, I was interested in that product continuing. And I think at that point Brendan decided he would pretty much just sell kits for people to assemble themselves, which for me, I'm not going to be able to assemble a kit that is this precise. Harmonica, you know, they seem like simple instruments. They're sold as toys a lot of times, but everything in there is so small that if you're not incredibly precise, you know, if you're a quarter of a millimeter off, a reed's not going to be able to, you know, vibrate through the, you know, it's a very precise work that goes into it. I didn't feel up to the task of attempting to figure out how to do that myself. So I talked with my friend Kenya Ballard, and he has been an amazing harp tech for quite a while, and he really took this idea and ran with it in terms of ironing out as many of the kinks of retrofitting. This is built on a marine band, retrofitting a marine band with this apparatus in a way that took quite a while for us to make in a way that I felt was a great playing harmonica. If you didn't ever use the button, it, you know, was one of the best playing harps I had played for the kind of way that I played, which I think was not the way that I prefer to play. I think historically when I had tried to set up harmonicas for overblows, typically I'd have to lower the gaps, maybe emboss the slots, things like this to really make the instrument a lot more efficient. For me, that kind of setup actually really hindered a whole portion of the way I had kind of grown up enjoying playing, putting a lot of air through the harmonica, playing chordally, playing really dynamic and perhaps loud to quiet, being able to shade in certain extra notes on the side without the whole note just going quickly, you know, and so I had always found the compromise between an overblow setup and a regular harp. And so, you know, we started working on it, and he was able to figure that out and make it a really satisfactory instrument that did everything we were trying to do really well. I took him on the road for a while, which was interesting because that created another set of problems, which I broke the slide off a whole set of them one time because we realized, oh shoot, yeah, you can't just like put it in some case, or you know, it's a different form factor slightly, so that's important. The plates would come off sometimes when I was playing on early versions just because it had, you know, just a few little extra modifications that, especially if you're retrofitting, are a pretty time-consuming thing to figure out how to do. So we sort of battle-tested it, and it was fun being a part of a product that he's now marketing. This is my signature harmonica. I was flattered that he called this the Ross Garren model. That was very sweet of him. I'm excited about it. I want to show you guys a little bit what it's designed to do, and I did really enjoy kind of just going through the process of creating something a little different, bringing it to market, and seeing all the problems that could arise and trying to work them out. And I am trying to really support him, you know, selling enough of these that it will be a continued endeavor for him. So I do have a couple for sale, and I also have information for those who at this point in time, they've mostly all sold out, so I do have information for people who might want to order them or at least talk with him about it. I think it's a really awesome frontier of harmonica right now, one that I'm obviously very excited about. So this is a G harp, and the basic thing I wanted it to do was play like a great blues harp. Where I could play loud, I could play hard, I could do a lot of things that like that for when I gapped a harp really close. I just couldn't play like that, you know. And I'm playing louder maybe than I would ordinarily, you know, that I'm just kind of trying to show you that it could take it, you know, it could take a beating in that way, which is often satisfactory to me. I like to play that way sometimes. Yeah?
For how long have you been playing the thing now?
What do you mean?
I mean, for how long has it been in use?
This particular harp?
Yeah, for you. I mean, because you give it such a beating, you know. How long do the reeds last?
Oh, that I can't really say. So I mean, I don't, like I said, I don't really play that hard all the time. I was kind of just demonstrating that it wouldn't fail under pressure, you know.
Yeah, but occasionally you will play it loud.
Oh, definitely. I would definitely play like that a little bit, you know, for sure. Yeah, yeah. I don't know how long they last because so far I have not worn any of them out. So
But these are just a.
Phosphor bronze or?
this is a marine band platform. He is selling a more affordable version off the Special 20. So it is exactly the marine band
It's the brass reeds.
brass
Yeah.
reeds.
Yeah.
And he is doing a fair amount of customization to the reeds themselves and the reed plates. I'm not actually quite sure on the ins and outs of what all he is doing in that way, but it's quite a lot of work. As I did A/B, you know, stock versus, you know, what he is doing to make it play well. And as far as how long they last, whether it's shorter or longer, I would say, to be honest.
You haven't played it as much yet.
Well, for me, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what your experience is, but I don't actually really. Typically, it's rare for me to break a harmonica or have something go really out of tune in less than a few years of playing.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I own Manjis.
Yeah,
They're like 15 years old,
right.
and I play them a lot,
Yeah.
and they're still in tune.
Well, to me, that's like way beyond what I would ever hope for any harmonica.
Yeah, right. So sometimes I'm just kidding myself, but they're in tune. So I don't know, but I'm a very soft player,
Right.
but still it's amazing because I've never.
Well, so
replaced
for
it.
this kind of harp, I couldn't tell you what, and hopefully once they're out there in the market for a little while, we'll learn, but I couldn't tell you what the difference in
No.
durability is, other than it feels the same to me, and I haven't worn out any of the ones I've been beta testing.
Yeah.
What's
So
what you can do with the button?
Yeah, so now, because I wanted to play the way I just demonstrated, these harps are not set up with any consideration for being able to overblow without the button. That's not the priority. It has the button specifically so you can overblow. But I have found, actually, I guess, as with many nice setup harps, I'll give this a whirl. I think I probably could do some overblowing on it without using the button. Yeah, and that's not something that I'm particularly great at, but the overblows were there. They just, I'd say I have trouble getting them in tune. As soon as I start trying to bend it up too much, it kind of is not reacting well. Let me try hole 1, which is always hard. Yeah, I can't really get it out of this harp at all. Again, it's not set up with that in mind, although I do think some advanced players may find reason to tighten the gaps a little bit and make it a harp they can overblow fine without it. But with the button, basically I have an incredible amount of control that I never had. So I'll just take you through 4 through 6. That's hole 4. That's 5. That's 6. So partially what I like is I can get a more satisfactory tone to me with the
Are you using the slide? Or?
I am, yeah. So I was on this harp, which again, in the quality control stuff that I've been doing, I have not been trying to overblow on these harps without using the slide. Like, I guess some of them I can. But I'm really... I'm able to just go up and play all the overdraws, overblows. Now I can hear when I'm doing it that I'm not as in tune as I would want to be, but that's just because I haven't worked on it as much. And now I have an instrument that I think really allows me to do it. The notes, I can tell still which ones are overblows, but they don't stick out nearly as much to me. And the other thing, the main thing that really excites me, in addition to just having a really stable way of getting an overblow, for those of you who do overblow, check it out. This is hole 1 on a G. You heard me attempting on this harp. I couldn't even really get anything out. Now I can. It's easy, you know, like I said, I developed overblowing in my playing, but I didn't get great at it. I didn't put a lot of time into it. So what I'm doing is a pretty easy thing. And what it has done for me is, in addition to having those notes, because I have the extra control, now instead of it just being about can I get that note out of the harmonica, there's a lot of fruit to be harvested from those notes I'm excited about. You know, I'm just kind of demonstrating myself bending the overdraws and things that were historically like super hard for me to even get out of a harmonica. I'm now actually able to make them expressive and do it in a form factor on a great playing harp that if I never wanted to touch the button, it's just totally familiar to me. So this is like kind of the exact type of thing that gets me excited.
Can you demonstrate like playing overblows in melodic context? I'm more interested in like how you're physically able to navigate using the button while you're in the middle of playing something more.
What do you mean?
Well, that's what I meant. I just wanted to hear you do it like in the context of the melody to see.
That's not something I've worked on. I'm just kind of trying to see how hard that is. I don't find it difficult. Some people I think would find the button part difficult. As a chromatic player, I'm used to like needing to release it at a specific time. You know, because I have seen guys who are not as familiar, they'll put the button into overblow and then they'll just keep it down to keep playing other stuff, and you know, and it's cutting off some reed, so that won't really work. But as a chromatic player, I'm used to. You know, I'm used to.
You say as a chromatic player, if you're a chromatic player, you push that button and it goes up half a step. With this, you push the button and it doesn't really do anything, but it allows your mouth to change what's going on.
And I think for the way my brain works, that's pretty satisfactory, because overblowing always required a mental move in my head and be like, I'm about to overblow now, I better, you know, get that tongue ready to rock, you know. So for me, I just, boom, the hand goes there. So yeah, it does not do what a chromatic button does in terms of its function, but the fact that I have to release it and engage it at specific times in order to not mess things up is a familiar part of my chromatic playing, if that makes sense, you know. And I will say, I didn't find any issues with adapting my brain to it. The one thing that happens every great once in a while, instead of me going like, and thinking it'll go, you know, like that, it'll be like a half step. Actually, what happens is every once in a while I'll go to bend like a normal note and I'll find myself hitting the slide, because I think in my brain it's starting to get mapped to like, you know, and it's let me tongue block them. You know, it's just making it something that the overblows, instead of being a huge consideration, are just kind of there for me. I don't have to adapt the technique.
So you're saying you can like overblow 2 notes at a time?
No, I just meant, I don't know about that. Maybe somebody could. I just meant that I could overblowing out of a tongue block or overdrawing out of a tongue block position.
Okay, but you're not like overblowing 2 notes on either side.
No, I don't. That's probably possible. I haven't tried that. Yeah. Yeah.
So since it's effectively blocking one reed,
Yeah.
could you, you're using it to overblow on that draw reed, wouldn't that also allow you to basically like an isolated reed draw bend, I guess, maybe on like
Yeah.
hole 5.
Yeah,
So hole
it
5
does.
can't normally bend, but now with that, you can bend it.
You can first of all have a slight timbre change for like a false fingering. This is just me playing hole 5 and hitting the button. Now you're talking about bending hole 5. That's no button. Here's button. Oh yeah,
So you
yeah.
can bend it deeper.
So again, like I was talking about with finding out where all the notes and all the bends and on the game changer might be with this, it could be a super easy adaptation to your playing where you just think, well, I use overblows every once in a while, I just got to remember to hit the button, and all of a sudden it's a lot easier, and I can also put a lot more expression into them and be excited about playing it. It could be just that, or you could start getting into all these things that were not possibilities on or you know, that were not possibilities on the regular harmonica and are specific to this. Yeah, wow, that's cool.
Could you guys say just a word about Seidel's Zerk tuning?
About what?
The circ tuning.
The Zerk tuning.
Well, okay, circular tuning is something that's been around as an idea for many, many years. And to my surprise, I found that I had a circular tuned Lee Oscar. I had no idea that I even owned it.
Was that a product he was selling, or it was a custom tuning?
I don't know.
Mhm.
I was surprised that it popped up. I thought, oh, what's in this box? Oh,
Yeah, right.
I mean, you've got all of the chords that can be built on that scale. You don't have octaves.
What is the tuning of this?
Well,
just
right?
up in thirds.
It's just up in thirds, and then
I see.
right. So you've got all of your triads, seventh chords, ninth
It's
chords.
like C7 and D minor just going up.
Right.
I see.
Well, this has a dominant seventh on the blow.
Right. I see. Yeah. Right.
Now, so you don't have octaves. You got triads, sevenths, ninths, as far as you want to take them. But the other thing that's kind of a disincentive to playing the thing is, what is a blow note in one octave will be a draw note in the next octave and back to a blow note, and vice versa.
So it switches.
Right, because we've got a 7-note scale, which is an uneven number, and we've got low draw pairs, which is even numbers. So any tuning that doesn't make some kind of correction will do that. The same thing is true of the pentaquartal tuning that I sometimes use, which is a pentatonic scale, produces some very beautiful chords, although it's the same chord, blow and draw, just different voicings. Low draw always goes up, right? But again, a blow note in this octave is going to be a draw note in the next octave, and then back again in the third. So,
They market
These-
it as,
Yeah.
it's easier to play single note melodies with,
yes and no, because again, C in this octave is blow, and the next octave is draw. That can be a little confusing. You know, and here's where we reach kind of the threshold of what we were talking about with adaptations that are only incremental. You know, we'll raise or lower these reeds to give you a country tuned or a minor tuned. But as soon as you start doing things like that, then you run into the unfamiliarity problem. And for instance, Hohner came out with their pentaharp a few years back, right? And to them it made, now, this was guitar players saying, you know, everybody teaches this 4-note, 5-note scale thing that's easy to produce on the guitar. You can play a lot of, I've heard Eric Clapton play Autumn Leaves using nothing but a minor blues scale, right? He makes it work. You could go seriously awry doing that, but, you know, if you're tasteful and discreet, you could do it. I said, okay, we should make a harp that does that. I've half-valved this one, so got a little sticky bit. Yeah, well, I'm going to use one that isn't valved, that way I won't have that problem. No, that one, no, will do. But it's so unfamiliar, the harmonica players, Because I saw a lot of them like, oh, you can't play chords on it. Or, what the heck is this? It's not familiar, right? Who moved everything around? You know, you have to be willing to adapt for these things, but that is a disincentive, right? I mean, I picked them up and I found all kinds of cool things I could do, even with the chords. Well, that's a C sus chord. Or is it maybe, oh, that's a G7 sus chord. Or, oh, that's an F2 chord, right? If you know a little bit more about chords and your ears are open to more than just major and seventh chords, things open up. Oh, you know, and I've been playing around with that, and I've written and recorded a number of things using this tuning.
That's awesome.
You know, and even playing it in different positions, because, let's see. Well, because, right, if I play,
Second position.
well, it's actually, it's hard to say what position it is. Basically, I'm playing an E flat, more or less major, right, on a C harp. Right, and that's what they put it right on the box. You can play it in first position or 10th position, right? And technically it is 10th position. But I've even found ways of playing it like in what would be A flat on a C harp. You know, I've had a lot of fun doing
So
that.
I'm gonna take
But
it
I have the kind of brain that, you know, loves to solve those kind of puzzles. A lot of players just want to pick it up and do what's familiar, you know, but then who moved my cheese? You know, it's not where I'm used to finding it. So, yeah, I mean, that I think has been a major barrier to a lot of people. The people who designed it had what to them was a good idea that made sense, but to people who normally play the harmonica, it was just confusing. You know, circular tuning will at least give you familiar chords, but again, it's, you know, who might move my cheese from the blow note to the draw note, you know, when I went over here.
As long as you're talking about alternate tunings, don't forget 4-key tuning if you're interested.
Well, yeah, David has been an active explorer of various alternate tunings that do all kinds of cool things. And now, right now, you're doing your Barry Harris tuning.
That's right, but before that, I was spent a few years playing 4-key tuning. And with any alternate tuning, you can't just pick it up, play the licks that you already know on a diatonic and expect that they're going to translate immediately over to what the new tuning is. Instead, I always say you should grab an alternate tuning, take it for a walk around the block, find out what it likes to do. Don't try to make it do what you already know how to do. Find out what it's good at, and then build on that.
That's the whole point.
Yeah, like if you arrive in San Antonio, don't expect it to be Chicago.
Exactly.
Dominic, was that the harp you had mentioned to me that in the hallway before that?
Oh, no, I had taken,
Do you have that with you? Is that something you might
I
demonstrate?
do.
Dominic is one of the guys doing this kind of work. Do you make things for sale or just?
No, for sale, no, this is all just,
But you
just
have
to
the
see-
know-how and you make it happen and you make working versions of these ideas that you have.
I have CAD and a 3D printer and some free time. That's that's what I have.
Let me just explain one more thing before we move on, just for people that don't know what 4-key tuning is. 4-key tuning was invented maybe 20, 30 years ago by a guy named Andy Newton in England, and it allows you to play a complete chromatic scale with just ordinary draw bends on a diatonic harp. And it's, instead of going from octave to octave in just 4 notes, it takes 5 notes to get from octave to octave. So it's got less geographical range on the harp. But it allows you to do some things that you couldn't do otherwise. And I've got demonstrations on YouTube of me playing 4-key tuning. There's also a guy named Roger Meyerson who's still a very avid advocate of 4-key tuning, if you're interested.
Hey, Dominic, yeah, show us this thing.
Oh, sure. So, I had come across Jim Untucky's Turbo Slide, which this is a Seidel harp. So the reeds in there are stainless steel. So one property of the stainless steel reeds is that they react to magnets, right? They're magnetic. and Jim and Tucky had done this thing where you could slide magnets over the blow reed to drop the blow reed pitch down. And I had been thinking, well, because sometimes I play some stuff where it's nice to have more of a minor feel in a position I'm already familiar with, I had been thinking, what if I could do the same thing on the draw reeds? So essentially what I did is I started designing and printing my own combs, just for the same reason as, you know, we had said before, once you design the thing, to print another comb, it costs me 10 cents, right? So I can get as many combs as I need now for 10 cents because I designed my own copy of my combs. But one thing I did then is if I can open this up here, I added a slider onto it where there's magnets now that are hovering below the draw reeds. And then when I slide the magnet below the draw reed, whatever draw reeds that the magnet slides below, it drops the pitch.
And what mechanism are you using to move the magnets?
I designed kind of like this magnet holder, basically, the slider,
so
the
that's
magnet
the black
holder.
thing that moves.
Yeah, and so these are neodymium magnets that I just put into, I essentially glued them into hollow set screws, and then I just threaded the hollow set screws into the plastic, so then I can adjust the distance from the magnet to the reed. And so
So you don't put too much force on it?
so yes, so, and that's, you know, one of the problems I've been trying to solve is if you play really hard, you know, because it's a magnetic field that's affecting the way that the reed's vibrating. So if you play really hard, the reed vibrates more, it catches more of the magnetic field and the pitch can actually, but if you're playing like medium or soft, then, then it sounds all right. But, so I guess just to give an example, so here would be like a major, here's like the one chord in the second. Yeah, and so I had started, I just use it because what if I wanted a more Dorian feel in second, I can slide the slider down and then, get that flat reed.
It only affects that one reed?
It affects the reed you put the magnets under. So for this one, I just have the magnets under 3 and 7. So when I slide the slider over, it drops 3 and 7 down a half step.
Very cool, very cool.
And so and actually one interesting side effect of that is the draw then becomes, in second position, it becomes a minor 7th chord when I do that. Which, then I went, wait, that's also a major 6th chord. So then I can play now like 11th position with the slider in major, because then I get a major 6th chord as all drawn.
Like that, it really interests me. You change one note, it seems like a very easy move in your brain. You say, all right, the major chord becomes minor. But actually now that that's the case, it's like 11th position, which maybe I had avoided before. Actually now it's great,
It makes the root more accessible because you don't have to bend now to get the rhythm.
Exactly.
Can you play a melody or something?
Yeah, I can't. So one of the problems, like I said, is I haven't really adjusted the magnet, so it doesn't sound like there's a little bit of like overtones that are unpleasant there that I'm trying to. But. So that would be like major and
Yeah, right.
And then if I go to second position, then.
So that's also alternate tune beyond that, right? Like that you're bending that root note in the upper octave.
Yeah, I had started. I got used to playing the wild tuning actually.
You got all kinds of shit going on.
Yeah, and I made some changes to the wild tuning too, because the 5 and 6 blow and the wild tuning were both the same note.
Right.
So what I decided to do was make my 5 blow the same as 4 draw, and so that allows me then to bend 5 draw down to what would be that flat 6 in second.
Very cool. So awesome. Yep. We wrapped up right now.
We're about 11 minutes over our allotted
All
time.
right, guys, I have one of these harps for sale. Somebody, don't make me take it home. Well, B flat or C, because Winslow gets the other one. So I got two that you could pick, but you can't buy both. There's a spa pricing.